Maria stands in the dim hallway, her breath thin and shaky, pretending she's just tired even though her chest feels tight enough to crack. She forces a smile as footsteps pass by behind her, hoping no one notices how her hands tremble when she reaches for the wall. It's the same routine she's mastered for years. Hold steady, stay quiet, look fine. But tonight, the silence feels louder than usual, pressing against her ribs until she can't tell whether she's holding herself up or slowly folding inward. Her phone buzzes in her pocket, but she doesn't look. She grips it once, twice, like a lifeline she's not ready to use. The house is warm, peaceful, unaware. She lowers her head, blinking back a sting she refuses to name, telling herself it's nothing, it always is. Yet something inside her slips, small but real, like a thread snapping. And she wonders, just for a heartbeat, how long can a person pretend before the truth leaks through the cracks? Maria walks into the kitchen with a practiced calm, the kind she puts on like makeup every morning. She moves quietly, careful not to draw attention to the heaviness in her steps. She opens a cabinet, pauses, then closes it again without taking anything. The room hums with soft morning noise, running water, clinking plates, Mateo's tiny footsteps. But none of it settles in her chest. She keeps her smile light, the kind that fools from a distance but not up close, except no one ever looks long enough to notice. Daniel asks if she slept okay. She nods, even though she barely slept at all. She brushes a crumb from the counter just to give her hands something to do. Inside, there's a slow ache, a bruise-like tiredness she hides because it feels easier than explaining. She wonders how many times she said, "I'm fine," this week. Maybe it's too many. Maybe she's starting to forget what fine even feels like. Later that afternoon, Maria folds laundry in the living room, but her hands move without rhythm, like they're following steps she no longer remembers learning. She presses her thumb into the fabric of a shirt, holding it there a little too long as if the cotton might steady her breathing. The house is calm, almost peaceful. Yet she feels a quiet pressure building behind her ribs. Lena asks if she can go to a friend's house, and Maria answers in a tone that sounds normal but feels distant to her own ears. She watches her daughter leave the room and feels a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief that she can rest her face. Sadness that even her children feel just out of reach. She knows she should sit, drink water, take a moment. Instead, she keeps folding because stopping feels dangerous, like the silence might swallow her if she slows down too much. As evening settles in, the house grows quieter, but Maria feels a buzzing under her skin, a restlessness she can't place. She stands at the sink, staring at a dish she's washed 3 times already. Her mind drifts, circling thoughts that don't have real names, just feelings that press against her chest. Daniel asks if she wants help, but she shakes her head before he even finishes the question. She doesn't know how to explain that she doesn't need help with dishes. She needs help with the heaviness she can't shake. She hears the kids laughing in the living room, a sound that should comfort her, but instead makes her chest tighten with guilt. She loves them deeply, fiercely, but tonight she feels like she's watching her own life through glass. She grips the edge of the counter, grounding herself with the cool surface, hoping the moment passes before someone asks her what's wrong. Late at night, the house finally sinks into silence, but Maria feels more awake than ever. She sits on the edge of her bed, elbows on her knees, staring at the floor, as if something there might explain why everything feels so heavy. The quiet makes her thoughts louder, sharper. She presses her palms together, breathing slowly, like she once read in an article about calming the mind, but the tightness in her chest doesn't ease. She hears Daniel brushing his teeth in the bathroom, humming softly, unaware of the storm building inches away. She doesn't blame him. She barely understands it herself. A part of her wants to wake him, ask him to sit with her, tell him she's tired in a way sleep can't fix. But the words feel too big, too heavy. So she stays still, breathing through the ache, hoping tomorrow feels lighter, even if she knows it probably won't. The next morning feels heavier than the last. Maria wakes with a pressure behind her eyes, the kind that makes the room feel dim, even with the curtains open. She forces her body upright, reminding herself she has things to do, people to take care of, reasons to push through. She moves through the hallway with slow steps, listening to the sounds of the house waking. The clatter of dishes, Daniel's low voice, the kids laughing over something she can't quite hear. She wants to join in, to feel that warmth, but everything inside her feels wrapped in cotton. She pauses near the doorway, steadying herself with a hand on the frame, hoping no one sees the moment her breath falters. She tells herself to smile, to blend in, to stay steady. But even as she walks toward the kitchen, she feels the crack inside her widening, like something small and fragile just gave way. By noon, Maria feels the weight of the day settling over her like a thick blanket she can't push off. She stands near the living room window, staring out at nothing in particular, pretending she's simply lost in thought. Daniel asks if she wants to run errands with him, but she says she's tired. Just tired. The excuse falls out so easily she almost believes it herself. She watches him leave, hears the door click shut, and the silence that follows feels too sharp, too empty. She fights the rising pressure in her chest, the quick flutter of panic she tries to swallow. She grips the edge of the curtain, grounding herself in the texture. For a moment, she wonders if this is normal. If everyone feels like this sometimes, maybe she's just overwhelmed. Maybe it will pass. But deep down, she feels it growing, slowly threading to every breath she takes. After lunch, Maria retreats to her bedroom under the excuse of needing a quick rest. She lies on top of the blankets, staring at the ceiling while the world outside her door carries on without her. She tries to shut her eyes, but her mind keeps spinning, thoughts piling over each other, none of them loud, but all of them heavy. She presses a hand over her chest, trying to slow the rhythm she knows is too fast. She hears soft footsteps in the hallway, the kids whispering, the creak of the sofa as someone sits down, but it all feels distant, like noise from another life. She wants to get up, rejoin the day, be herself again, but she feels pinned to the mattress by something she can't name. She whispers, "Just 5 minutes," hoping rest will help, but even the quiet feels too loud inside her head. The afternoon drags into early evening, and Maria sits on the couch, trying to keep her breathing steady as the kids argue over a toy. Their voices bounce around the room, sharp and unpredictable, and each sound sends a small jolt through her. She tells herself to stay calm, that they're just being kids, but her nerves buzz like exposed wires. Daniel steps in and settles them down. Giving her a gentle look, she tries to return but fails. She grips the couch cushion, grounding herself in the fabric while a quiet panic pushes at the edges of her chest. She feels the rush building, warm, tight, overwhelming. She hides it with slow breaths, hoping no one notices the tremble in her hands. She doesn't want to ruin the moment, doesn't want her family to see what she can't control. But the cracks feel deep tonight, and she's not sure how much longer she can keep patching them alone. By nightfall, Maria feels like she's carrying the whole day inside her chest. She stands in the bathroom staring at her reflection, searching her own eyes for something she recognizes. She splashes cool water on her face, hoping it will quiet the buzzing in her mind, but the relief fades too quickly. She grips the edge of the sink, leaning forward as if the porcelain can hold her up. Daniel calls from the bedroom, asking if everything's okay. She answers automatically, "Yeah, I'm fine," even though the words feel hollow. She watches her lips form the lie, sees the exhaustion in the slight tremble of her jaw. She wants to tell him the truth, to let the worry spill out, but the fear of being a burden keeps her silent. She takes one slow breath, then another, practicing calm in the mirror the way she practices everything else, alone. Maria wakes with the kind of heaviness that makes even turning over feel like work. She sits up slowly, the room spinning just enough to unsettle her. She tells herself it's just fatigue, just another long week, but a small part of her knows it's more than that. When she walks into the hallway, she feels the air pressing against her skin, thick and unwelcome. She hears the kids laughing from the living room, but instead of comforting her, the sound feels sharp. She forces herself to keep moving, to stay steady, because she doesn't want anyone asking questions she isn't ready to answer. The floorboards creak under her steps, and for a moment she pauses, pressing a hand over her stomach as a wave of dizziness passes. She waits for it to fade before she continues. Pretending nothing happened, she whispers, "Keep going," to herself, as if the words might hold her together a little longer. Later in the morning, Maria tries to tidy the living room, picking up scattered toys and folded blankets. But her hands keep slowing, pausing over simple tasks. She sets a book back on the shelf, then forgets what she was doing next. The fog in her head thickens, making her feel like she's walking underwater. Mateo asks her a question, something simple about a snack, and she answers without really hearing him. She hates the way her voice sounds, thin, distant, like it belongs to someone else. She sinks onto the couch for a moment, pressing her palms together as she tries to steady her breathing. She knows she should push through it, keep going, keep moving. But her body feels too heavy, and her thoughts too slow. She wonders if anyone notices how quiet she's becoming, or if she's gotten too good at disappearing in plain sight. By afternoon, the pressure inside Mariah's chest grows into something tight and unsteady. She stands near the kitchen counter, trying to drink a glass of water, but her hands shake just enough to make her set it down. She presses a palm against her sternum, trying to breathe through the pounding panic building in her ribs. She tries to keep her face calm when the kids walk in, tries to smile, but the muscles in her cheeks barely respond. Daniel asks if she's okay, and she simply nods because she can't trust her voice not to crack. When he leaves the room, she leans forward, elbows on the counter, letting her weight fall into the cool surface. It steadies her for a moment, but the fear doesn't fade. She closes her eyes tightly, begging herself to get it together before anyone comes back. The day continues like a slow unraveling. Maria tries to help Lena with homework, sitting beside her at the dining table, but the words on the page swim in and out of focus. She nods along, giving simple answers, hoping they make sense. Lena glances at her a few times, confused by the delay before Maria responds. Maria keeps her hands folded tightly in her lap, trying to hide how badly they're shaking. When Mateo rushes in asking her to play, she feels a wave of sadness so strong she has to look away. She wants to be present, really present, but her mind feels like it's slipping farther away by the hour. Daniel walks by, hovering as if he wants to say something but doesn't know how. Maria forces a smile and says she's fine. The words feel thin, brittle, like they might break if someone touches them too hard. Night comes with a quiet weight that settles heavily on Mariah's shoulders. She sits alone on the edge of the couch, the living room dim except for a single lamp glowing behind her. She feels drained in a way sleep won't fix, hollow in places she can't explain. She hears Daniel getting the kids ready for bed, their voices drifting faintly through the hallway. She should get up, help, be part of the moment, but she can't. Her body feels glued in place, her mind wrapped in fog. When Daniel finally steps into the room and asks again if she's sure she's okay, she nods without lifting her head. She knows he doesn't believe her, but she doesn't know how to start the conversation she's been avoiding for years. She stares at her hands resting in her lap, wondering how something invisible can hurt this much. Morning arrives with tension woven into the air, like the house itself can feel something shifting. Maria tries to move through the kitchen, but every sound feels sharp. The clink of plates, the scrape of chairs, the uneven rhythm of conversation she can't quite follow. She bumps her hip against the counter and winces, the small sting more overwhelming than it should be. Daniel watches her carefully, his questions gentle but persistent, and she keeps brushing them off because she's afraid of what will spill out if she answers honestly. Her hands shake when she reaches for a mug, so she tucks them into her sleeves before anyone notices. Even the kids are quieter this morning, picking up on something they can't name. Maria forces a smile, but the muscles in her face refuse to cooperate. She can feel herself unraveling faster now, barely holding the edges together as the day begins. By midday, the air feels tight again. Maria tries to clean the hallway, gathering shoes and stray toys, but her breathing becomes uneven halfway through. She rests a hand on the wall, closing her eyes as the dizziness returns. She hates the feeling, like the world is swaying without warning. Daniel hears the pause in her steps and asks if she's okay. She responds too quickly, too sharply, and the moment the words leave her mouth, guilt hits her like a wave. She apologizes, but the apology sounds thin. Daniel steps closer, trying to read her expression, but she turns away, pretending to keep cleaning. Inside her chest, the pressure grows, swelling with every unspoken word. She wants to scream, cry, run, curl up, anything but stand here acting normal. But she keeps her back straight, her movements small, hiding the breaking point creeping closer. By late afternoon, the smallest things begin setting Maria off. A dropped spoon, a sudden laugh, a door closing too loudly. Each sound feels like a jolt to her system. She tries to make dinner, but her hands keep fumbling. Ingredients slipping, motions clumsy, breath uneven. When Daniel steps in to help, she stiffens, feeling judged even though he is only trying to support her. She snaps at him without meaning to, and the look on his face makes her chest ache. She apologizes again, but this time the apology shakes. The kids sit quietly at the table, watching the tension settle into the space between their parents. Maria grips the counter so tightly her knuckles whiten. She whispers to herself, "Hold it together," but the words feel useless now. Everything inside her feels too full, too loud, too close to breaking. Evening creeps in with a heaviness that Maria can no longer hide. She goes to her bedroom under the guise of needing a moment, but once the door closes, she sinks to the edge of the bed with her hands trembling uncontrollably. Her thoughts feel sharp now, too sharp, like they're cutting at every corner of her mind. She feels overwhelmed by a mix of sadness, fear, and exhaustion that she can't explain without breaking down complete. When she hears Daniel's footsteps approaching, she wipes her face quickly, clearing away tears she didn't realize had fallen. She forces her breathing to steady, but the ache in her chest stays. He knocks softly, asking if he can come in. She says yes, but her voice cracks, revealing more than she meant to. When he enters, she tries to smile, but the expression collapses before it forms. She knows he sees it now. The truth she's been hiding. 950, 1200 characters. Night falls hard. The house settles into its usual quiet, but inside Maria the storm only grows. She steps into the hallway to breathe, thinking the open space might help. But instead the silence presses against her ears. Her chest tightens so quickly she grips the wall, her breath hitching as panic rises fast and sharp. She tries to swallow the fear, to steady herself, but her hands shake and her vision blurs at the edges. She feels herself slipping faster than she can control. Daniel calls her name from the living room, but she can't answer. She squeezes her eyes shut, fighting the wave threatening to pull her under. For the first time, she feels truly afraid of what's happening inside her. She slides down the wall until she's sitting on the floor, pulling her knees close, trying to breathe through the collapse she can no longer hide. The breaking point isn't coming. It's here. Maria wakes before sunrise, but not because she wants to. Her eyes snap open with a jolt, her chest already tight before her mind has time to catch up. She sits up in bed, feeling the weight of the night clinging to her like a second skin. She tries to steady her breathing, but each inhale feels shallow, thin, like it's slipping away before it reaches her lungs. She walks to the hallway, needing space, needing air, needing something she can't name. The house is silent, wrapped in dim blue morning light, and for a moment she hopes the quiet might calm her, but instead, it amplifies everything. Her thoughts, her fear, the rising panic building in her chest. She grips the edge of the wall, bracing herself, As her body shakes, she whispers, "Please, stop." Even though she doesn't know who she's talking to, every part of her feels like it's unraveling faster than she can gather herself. Her breathing worsens as the morning unfolds. Each step feels heavy, unsteady, like the floor tilts beneath her feet. She reaches the kitchen counter, holding on with both hands as her vision blurs. She knows she should wake Daniel, should tell him what's happening. But the shame tightens around her voice like a grip. She doesn't want to be a burden, doesn't want to explain what she barely understands. A sharp panic spikes in her chest, spreading warmth that borders on pain, and she bends over, trying to catch a breath that refuses to come. Her body trembles harder. Tears fall before she feels them start. She tries to silence her sobs, but the fear is too strong. Now, too real. She feels small, fragile, terrified of what her own mind is doing to her. And she knows, deep down, that she cannot hide this much longer. Daniel tries to help, but Maria can't hear anything clearly anymore. His voice feels distant, muffled under the pounding of her heartbeat. Her hands slip from the counter and she sinks to her knees on the cold floor. Her breath comes out in broken bursts and she presses her palms against her face, trying to shield herself from the fear clawing up her spine. She feels exposed, fragile, desperate. She hears Daniel calling her name. Gentle at first, then urgent, but she can't form a response. Every thought collapses into noise. She feels the world spinning, tilting, shrinking. Tears stream down her cheeks as she tries to force air into her lungs. She shakes her head, unable to speak, unable to steady herself. She has hidden so much for so long, and now everything pours out uncontrollably, raw and painful. Her breaking point arrives like a storm. She cannot stop. Maria tries to speak, but her voice comes out broken, barely more than a whisper. She tells Daniel she's sorry. Sorry for feeling this way. Sorry for falling apart. Sorry for everything she's kept hidden. Her chest heaves as she takes uneven breaths, each one a struggle she can't control. Daniel holds her gently, but even his touch feels overwhelming in the moment. She leans into him anyway, too exhausted to fight it. Her body shakes from the weight of months, maybe years of silent battles. She clings to his shirt, grounding herself with the familiar warmth. She feels embarrassed, terrified, exposed, but also relieved, because the hiding is over. Tears spill from her eyes without slowing. She feels like she's shattering, like every piece of her is falling at once, and there is nothing she can do to stop it. The fear is raw, the pain is loud, and she cannot pretend anymore. Maria's breakdown moves from the kitchen into the hallway as she tries to stand, but her legs barely hold her. Daniel follows close, trying to guide her, but she collapses again, this time right in front of the small security camera mounted near the ceiling. She forgets it's there. She forgets everything except the panic crushing her. She sinks to the floor, sobbing into her hands, her breath sharp and uneven. The rawness of her pain fills the narrow hallway, echoing off the walls. Daniel kneels beside her, holding her gently, whispering her name, but she shakes her head, drowning in fear she's hidden for too long. Lena and Mateo watch from the end of the hall, frozen by confusion and worry. The camera blinks silently, recording everything her family never saw, everything she never said, everything she pretended wasn't happening. Her secret is no longer secret, and she doesn't even know it. Not yet. The house is quiet the next morning, but the air carries the kind of stillness that feels heavy rather than peaceful. Maria stays in bed longer than usual, curled beneath the blanket, drained from the night before. Daniel moves through the hallway with careful footsteps, trying not to wake her, unsure of what to do or say. His mind runs through every moment of last night, replaying the fear in her eyes, the way her body shook, the way she collapsed. He feels helpless, guilty, scared. As he walks toward the living room, he notices the small blinking indicator on the security panel, one he rarely pays attention to. A motion alert from last night. something recorded. He taps the screen absently, expecting nothing important. But the moment the footage begins to play, his breath catches. There she is, Mariah, falling apart in the hallway alone, terrified and unaware she was being watched. Daniel watches the footage again, slower this time. He sees every tremble in her hands, every desperate gasp, every moment she tried to hide from the world. His own reflection stares back at him through the glare on the screen, guilt pressing into his chest like a weight he can't shake. He never realized how deep her pain ran. He never saw how close she came to breaking. The hardest part is knowing he was right there, steps away, yet she was suffering alone, silent, unseen. Lena notices the tension in his shoulders and asks what's wrong. For a moment, he can't speak. He just stares at the frozen frame of Maria collapsing. When he finally answers, his voice cracks. He tells her he needs a minute, but even that feels like a lie. He doesn't need a minute. He needs to fix what he's ignored for far too long. Daniel finally gathers the courage to wake Maria, but when he enters the room, she doesn't stir right away. Her exhaustion is carved deep, her body barely responsive after days of carrying everything alone. He kneels beside her and says her name softly. She opens her eyes slowly, confusion flickering through them as she tries to orient herself. He hesitates before telling her that he saw the footage, every moment she tried to hide. For a second, her entire face shifts with fear, shame, panic, all at once. She turns away, pulling the blanket up as if trying to vanish. But Daniel gently touches her shoulder and tells her she doesn't need to hide anymore. His voice breaks when he says he should have noticed sooner. She swallows, breathing unevenly, unsure how to respond. The truth is heavy, but so is the relief of not pretending. Maria sits up slowly, her hands trembling as she tries to steady herself. She asks Daniel what exactly he saw. Her voice is small, fragile, as if she's bracing for judgment. Daniel tells her gently, everything, her knees buckling, her breath spiraling, her panic swallowing her whole. She closes her eyes, overwhelmed by the thought of someone watching such a raw, unguarded moment. But Daniel's voice softens further as he explains. He isn't angry. He's worried, scared, and sorry. Maria feels a knot form in her chest, a mix of fear and relief. She admits quietly that she didn't know how to ask for help. The words tremble out of her like a confession. Daniel sits beside her and tells her they'll figure this out together. She wants to believe him. She wants to trust that she's not alone anymore. For the first time in months, she lets someone sit in the darkness with her. Later that afternoon, Daniel gathers the kids in the living room. Maria sits beside him on the couch, hands clasped tightly, heart pounding. She doesn't want them to see the footage. She doesn't want them to worry. But Daniel tells her softly that they deserve to understand. When the video starts playing, the room falls silent. Lena's expression tightens with shock. Mateo moves closer to her, confused. Maria can't look at the screen. She keeps her eyes on the floor, ashamed of how broken she looked. But when the footage ends, Lena crawls onto the couch and hugs her tightly without saying a word. Mateo follows, wrapping his small arms around her waist. Daniel places a hand on her back, grounding her. For the first time, Maria cries not from fear but from finally being seen. Her pain is no longer invisible, and for the first time, she isn't carrying it alone. Morning arrives with a softer kind of quiet. Not the heavy stillness of fear, but the fragile calm that comes after a storm. Maria wakes slowly, her body still tired but not trembling. She sits up and breathes, really breathes, noticing that her chest doesn't feel as tight. Daniel enters the room gently, carrying a mug of warm tea. He doesn't speak at first. He just sits beside her so she knows she isn't alone. She takes the mug with shaky hands and whispers, "Thank you," her voice small but sincere. The house feels different today, like the walls themselves are trying to hold her together. She hears the kids moving around, quieter than usual, as if they're afraid of making things too heavy again. But Maria doesn't want silence anymore. She wants honesty. She wants to stop pretending. She wants to stop pretending. For the first time in a long time, she lets herself hope that maybe, just maybe, things can get better. Later in the morning, Maria gathers the kids in the living room. She sits on the couch while they settle beside her, their eyes soft with worry. She tells them, in the simplest words she can find, that she's been struggling. That sometimes people feel sad or scared even when nothing looks wrong on the outside. Lena leans closer, listening with more maturity than her age should carry. Mateo holds her hand without saying a word. Maria explains that she's going to get help, real help, and that none of this is their fault. The whole time she talks, her voice shakes, but she keeps going because she knows they deserve honesty. When she finishes, both kids hug her gently, careful not to overwhelm her. And for the first time, speaking the truth feels easier than hiding it, like lifting a weight she thought she'd never be able to set down. In the afternoon, Maria sits across from Dr. Harper Lee, her new therapist. The office is quiet, warm, with soft light filtering through tall windows. At first, Maria struggles to speak, the words catching in her throat. But Dr. Lee's voice is calm, patient, guiding her gently. Maria begins to open up, slowly at first, then in small waves. She talks about the pressure she always carried, the fear of disappointing everyone, the panic she didn't understand, the emptiness that crept in until she couldn't hide it anymore. Saying the truth out loud feels terrifying, yet strangely freeing. Dr. Lee listens without judging, reminding her that none of this makes her weak. Maria feels a lump in her throat, the kind that comes before either crying or finally exhaling. For the first time, she feels like she's speaking to someone who can help her find her way back to herself. In the evening, the house feels softer, calmer, as if everyone is moving with more intention. Maria sits at the dining table while Daniel prepares dinner, the kids setting the table quietly. She watches them with a new kind of ache, not the pain she's carried for months, but something gentler, something like gratitude. When Daniel places a plate in front of her, she meets his eyes and whispers, "Thank you for being here." He nods, not needing more than that. During dinner, the kids talk about school, about little things, about cartoons and art projects, careful to give Maria space, but not distance. She listens, really listens. The noise no longer overwhelming, but comforting. She feels tired, yes, but not alone, not invisible. And when she realizes that a small breath she didn't know she was holding finally leaves her chest, night settles softly across the house. Maria steps into the hallway, the same place where she fell apart days earlier. But tonight the air feels different. She stands beneath the camera, staring at the small blinking light. It no longer feels like a witness to her worst moment. It feels like the thing that forced truth into the open, the thing that finally made her family see what she couldn't say. Daniel joins her, slipping his hand into hers without speaking. She leans her head against his shoulder, letting the quiet wrap around them. For the first time, she isn't pretending. She isn't hiding. She isn't alone in the dark. She whispers, barely audible, "I'm trying." Daniel squeezes her hand. "I know," he answers softly. "Healing won't be fast. It won't be simple. But it's real. And it starts here. Slow, imperfect, honest."